Okay, so this is the Daf Yomi. We're in Avodah Zarah, Daf 48. So the Mishnah says there are three types of trees that were used as part of idolatrous rites, so Ashera trees. So a tree that one initially planted for the sake of idol worship is forbidden, and one may not derive benefit from any part of the tree. If one lopped off part of the trunk of a tree or trimmed its branches for the sake of idol worship, that is to worship that which would regrow there, and the tree's trunk or limbs regrew, one removes that which is regrown and burn it. The remainder of the tree is then permitted. If one erected an object of idol worship beneath a tree and subsequently removed it, it is permitted to derive benefit from the tree. The Gemara says, the Mishnah teaches that if one lopped off or trimmed a tree's branches for the sake of idol worship and it regrew, the tree is permitted upon the removal of the new growth. The sages of the school of Rabbi Yomi say, and this is the halacha, only when one sank the shoot of a vine into the ground or grafted onto the trunk of the tree itself. The Gemara asks, but didn't we learn that if he lopped off part of the trunk or trimmed the tree's branches, the growth is forbidden? In order to render a tree forbidden, according to the sages of the school of Rabbi Yomi, the act dedicated to idol worship must be sinking or grafting, which are tantamount to replanting the entire tree. The Mishnah indicates that even cutting off part of a tree renders the new growth forbidden. So the Gemara answers, rather, when the statement of the sages of the school of Rabbi Yomi was stated, it was stated with regard to the revocation of the idolatrous status. What they meant to say was that even if one sank the shoot of a vine into the ground or grafted onto the tree itself, affecting a more significant change, nevertheless, when one removes that which was regrown, the tree is permitted. As lest you say that since one sank the shoot of a vine into the ground or grafted onto the tree itself, it is similar to a tree that one initially planted for idol worship, and the entire tree should be forbidden. So the sages of the school of Rabbi Yomi counter this and teach us that even in this case, the tree is permitted when that which was regrown is removed. So Shmuel says, in the case of one who bows to a tree, its additional subsequent growth is forbidden. So Rabbi Elazar raised an objection from the Mishnah. If one lopped or trimmed the tree for the sake of idol worship and the tree's trunk or limbs regrew, one removes that which was regrown and burn it. This indicates that if one lopped or trimmed it, the additional growth is forbidden, but one did not lop or trim it. Even if one bowed to the tree is not forbidden. The Gemara answers that Shmuel could say to you, in accordance with whose opinion is this Mishnah? It is in accordance with the opinion of the rabbis who maintain that a tree that was planted and only subsequently worshipped is permitted, as it was not initially planted for idol worship. And Shmuel says his statement in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Yoshi bar Yehuda, who says that a tree that one planted and subsequently worshipped is forbidden. So accordingly, bowing to a tree renders its subsequent growth forbidden. So Rav Ashi objects to this answer. From where is it derived that Rabbi Yoshi bar Yehuda and the rabbis disagree with regard to additional growth? Perhaps all agree that additional growth after the tree was worshipped is forbidden, and they disagree only with regard to its trunk. The Gemara explains what the nature of this dispute would be. As Rabbi Yoshi bar Yehuda maintains that its trunk is also forbidden, as it is written, and you should break down their altars and dash in pieces their pillars and burn their Asherim with fire. Deuteronomy 12:3. Burning with fire destroys the whole tree, which indicates that the entire tree is forbidden, including its trunk. And the rabbis maintain that the trunk of the tree is permitted, as it is written, you shall break down their altars and dash in pieces their pillars and hew down their Asherim and burn their graven images with fire. Deuteronomy 7:5, which is the tree whose hewn part is forbidden, but its trunk is permitted. You must say it is a tree that one planted and subsequently worshipped. And if you would say that we did not explain their opinions in this manner previously, as the source given there for the opinion of Rabbi Yoshi bar Yehuda is the same verse given here as the source for the opinion of the rabbis, simply reverse the explanation given there to match the one given here. The verse cited there as the source for the opinion of the rabbis, namely, and burn their Asherim with fire, should instead be considered the source for the opinion of Rabbi Yoshi bar Yehuda, who deems even the trunk of the subsequently worshipped tree forbidden. And the verse cited there as the source for the opinion of Rabbi Yoshi bar Yehuda, namely, and hew down their Asherim, should instead be considered the source for the opinion of the rabbis that only subsequent growth is forbidden. The The Gemara rejects Rav Ashi's suggestion. It cannot be that all agree that additional growth is forbidden when a tree is planted and subsequently worshipped, because if so, who teaches the Mishnah that says that the tree is forbidden when one lopped it or trimmed it? It is neither the rabbis nor Rabbi Yoshi Bar Yehuda. If one were to say that the rabbis teach it, this cannot be, as they maintain that even in a case where one did not lop it or trim it, but simply bowed to it, the additional growth is forbidden. So if one were to say that Rabbi Yoshi Bar Yehuda teaches the Mishnah, this cannot be, as he maintains that even the trunk of the tree is forbidden after it has been worshipped, and not just the subsequent growth. The Gemara responds, defending Rav Ashi's suggestion, if you wish, say that the rabbis teach the Mishnah, and if you wish, say that Rabbi Yoshi Bar Yehuda teaches it. The Gemara explains each possibility. If you wish, say that Rabbi Yoshi Bar Yehuda teaches it, and as when Rabbi Yoshi Bar Yehuda says that even in a case where one did not lop it or trim it, the trunk of the tree is nevertheless forbidden. It is only in a case where one worshipped the tree without specification, that is, not to any specific part of the tree. But if one lopped it or trimmed it for the sake of idol worship, he has revealed his intention, and namely that he believes that the additional growth is suitable for idol worship, but that the trunk of the tree is not suitable for his idol worship. So therefore, in such a case, only the additional growth is forbidden. So the Gemara explains the other possibility. If you wish, say that the rabbis teach it, although they maintain that even without lopping or trimming the tree, the additional growth is forbidden if it is worshipped. Nevertheless, it was necessary for the Mishnah to mention the case where one lopped it or trimmed it specifically. Otherwise, it might enter your mind to say that since one performed an action on the tree itself, the trunk of the tree should also be forbidden. Therefore, the Mishnah teaches us that only the additional growth is forbidden and not the trunk. The Mishnah now says, which tree is deemed forbidden as an Ashera? Any tree that has an object of idol worship beneath it. So Rabbi Shimon says any tree that people worship. And there was an incident in Zidon involving a tree that people would worship. And Jews found beneath it a heap of stones. So Rabbi Shimon said to them, examine this heap of stones. And they examined it and found in it an idolatrous image. So Rabbi Shimon said to them, since it is the image that they worshipped, we can permit use of the tree to those who wish to derive benefit from it. So the Gemara now says, the Mishnah teaches which tree is an Ashera. The Gemara asks, but didn't we learn in the previous Mishnah that there are 3 types of Ashera trees? The Gemara answers, this is what the Mishnah is saying. Of the 3 trees mentioned in the previous Mishnah, there are 2 where the trees themselves are worshipped, and everyone agrees that they are forbidden. And there is one that is subject to a dispute between Rabbi Shimon and the rabbis, which is the Ashera with regard to which Rabbi Shimon and the rabbis disagree. It is any tree that has an object of idol worship beneath it. As Rabbi Shimon says, that any tree that the people worship is forbidden, but that a tree under which an idol was placed is not forbidden. The Gemara presents a question. Which tree is assumed to be an Ashera, even without specific knowledge, that it was worshipped? Rav says, any tree that Gentile priests sit beneath, and do not taste of its fruits, as they apparently consider the fruits consecrated to the idol. And Shmuel says, even if they so much as say, these dates are for the house of Natzrefe, there we go. A house of idol worship, the tree is forbidden. This is because the idol worshippers would throw the dates into beer and drink it on their festival day. Amemar says, the elders of Pumbedita said to me that the halacha is in accordance with the opinion of Shmuel. The Mishnah now says, with regard to an Ashera, one may not sit in its shade, but if one sat in its shade, he remains ritually pure, and one may not pass beneath it, and if one pass beneath it, he is ritually impure. If the tree was robbing the public, that is, if its branches extended over public property and one passed beneath it, he remains pure. So the Mishnah teaches, now this is the Gemara now, one may not sit in its shade. The Gemara asks, isn't this obvious? He is directly benefiting from an object of idol worship. So Rabbi Bar Bar Chana said that Rabbi Yochanan said, it is necessary only with regard to the shade of its shade. So the shade that extends as far as the height of the tree is considered its shade. The less significant shade, that which extends further that the tree's height, start over. The shade that extends as far as the height of the tree is considered its shade. The less significant shade, that which extends further than the tree's height, is referred to as the shade of its shade. The Mishnah is teaching that even this secondary shade is forbidden. So that's like basically, if the sun's coming low, you have a really long shadow. So that would be the shade of its shade, is the shadow when it's longer than the height of the tree. The Gemara comments, by inference, with regard to the shade of its height, its primary shade, if one sat there, he is impure. The Gemara rejects this inference. No, this inference is not correct, as even with regard to the shade of its height, if one sat there, he remains pure. And this is what the Mishnah is teaching us, that even with regard to the shade of its shade, one may not sit in it. There are those who teach this discussion with regard to the latter clause of that part of the Mishnah, which states, but if one sat in its shade, he remains ritually pure. The Gemara asks, isn't this obvious? Why should he be rendered impure? So Rabbi Bar Chana said that Rabbi Yochanan said, it is necessary only with regard to direct shade of its height. Even in this case, he remains pure. So the Gemara comments, by inference, with regard to the shade of its height, with regard to the shade of its shade, one may even sit there ab initio. So the Gemara answers, no, this inference is not correct. Rather, this is what the Mishnah is teaching us, that even with regard to the shade of its height, if one sat there, he remains pure. The Mishnah teaches, and one may not pass beneath an Ashera, and if one pass beneath it, he is ritually impure. The Gemara asks, what is the reason? The Gemara answers, because it is impossible that there is no remnant of an idolatrous offering underneath the tree. The Gemara asks, whose opinion is this? It is the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda ben Betera, as it is taught in the Braita, that Rabbi Yehuda ben Betera says, from where is it derived that an idolatrous offering transmits impurity in a tent? That is, to that which is under the same roof. It is derived from that which is stated, quote, and they joined themselves unto Baal Peor and ate the offerings of the dead. Psalms 106:28. It is derived from here that just as a corpse transmits impurity in a tent, so too an idolatrous offering transmits impurity in a tent. So the Mishnah teaches, if the tree was robbing the public and one passed beneath it, he remains pure. So a dilemma was raised before the sages. Does the Mishnah mean that if one passed under the tree, he remains pure, but that is prohibited to pass beneath it ab initio? Or does the Mishnah mean that one may pass beneath it ab initio? So that is Rabbi Yitzchak ben Elazar says the name of Hizkiah. One may pass ab initio. And Rabbi Yochanan says the Mishnah means that if one passed, he remains pure, but it is prohibited to pass ab initio. So the Gemara explains, and they do not disagree. This opinion, that one may not pass beneath an Ashera, is referring to a case where there is another way to get to his destination. So that opinion, that it is permitted to pass beneath it ab initio, is referring to a case where there is no other way. So the Gemara relates, Rav Sheshet, who was blind, was being guided by his attendant toward his city, and there was an Ashera shadowing the path. So Rav Sheshet said to his attendant, when you arrive at the Ashera, have me run past it quickly. The Gemara asks, what were the circumstances? If there was no other way to get to his destination, why did Rav Sheshet request have me run past it? In such circumstances, it is permitted to walk normally underneath an Ashera. And if there was another way to get to his destination, when Rav Sheshet said, have me run past it, was it then permitted for him to do so? He still passed under the Ashera. So the Gemara answers, actually it was a case where there was no other way to get to his destination. And although it was permitted for Rav Sheshet to walk normally beneath the Ashera, Rav Sheshet wanted to run past it because an important person is different. So an important person should try to pass underneath the Ashera as quickly as possible, lest others misunderstand the circumstances and learn from him that it is permitted for one to walk underneath an Ashera, even when there is another way for him to reach his destination. The Mishnah says, one may plant vegetables underneath an Ashera during the rainy season. So as the vegetables do not benefit from its shade, on the contrary, the tree's foliage prevents the vegetables from being properly irrigated by the rain. But one may not plant vegetables under an Ashera during the summer, as the shade benefits them. And lettuce may not be planted there at all, neither in the summer nor in the rainy season, because shade is always beneficial to lettuce. So Rabbi Yoshi says one may not plant vegetables under an Ashera even during the rainy season because the tree's foliage falls upon them and serves as a fertilizer for them. So the Mishnah records a dispute between Rabbi Yoshi and the rabbis with regard to planting beneath an Ashera in the rainy season when vegetables are fertilized by the tree's forbidden fallen foliage, as the plant is also fertilized by the permitted nutrients of the ground. The plant's growth is caused by both prohibited and permitted sources. Therefore, the Gemara asks, is this to say that Rabbi Yoshi holds that when both this and that cause it, that is, when both permitted and forbidden items contribute to a result, the result is forbidden, and he therefore holds that it is prohibited to plant underneath an Ashera in the rainy season, and the rabbi said that when both this and that cause a result, the result is permitted. So didn't we hear that they stated the opposite ruling? As we learned in a Mishnah 43b, Rabbi Yoshi says when one encounters an idol, he should grip the idol and throw the dust to the wind or cast it into the sea. The rabbis said to him, what is the good of that? That also gives a Jew benefit from the idol as it becomes fertilizer for his crops, and deriving any kind of benefit is prohibited, as it is written, and nothing of the prescribed items shall cleave to your hand. The contraction between the statement of the rabbis in the Mishnah and the statement of the rabbis in the Mishnah here is difficult, and the contradiction between the statement of Rabbi Yoshi in that Mishnah and the statement of Rabbi Yoshi here is difficult. The Gemara explains, granted, the contradiction between one statement of Rabbi Yoshi and the other statement of Rabbi Yoshi is not different, or not difficult. It may be resolved as follows. There, in the earlier Mishnah, since the ground up idol is dispersed and is going to be completely lost, so Rabbi Yoshi permits deriving benefit from the fertilizer. By contrast, in the Mishnah here, where the fallen leaves are not going to be lost so quickly, as they fall together on top of the vegetables and provide direct benefit as fertilizer, deriving benefit from them is prohibited. By the contradiction between one statement of the rabbis and the other statement of the rabbis is difficult. Therefore, the Gemara concludes, reverse the attribution of the statements, so that the Mishnah teaches that it is the rabbis who deem it prohibited to plant under an Ashera in the rainy season, while Rabbi Yoshi deems it permitted. So if you wish to say indeed, do not reverse the statements. The contradiction between the statements of Rabbi Yoshi can be resolved as we answered before. The contradiction between the statements of the rabbis can be resolved in accordance with that which Rav Mari, son of Rav Kahana, says about an animal offering that became disqualified for sacrifice. So the halacha is that this animal is sold and the proceeds are dedicated to the temple treasury. So one may not skin the hide of the animal whole, even though this would make the hide more valuable than if it were cut into pieces. So Rav Mari, son of Rav Kahana, explains that this is because the value is enhanced with regard to the hide and is offset by the damage caused by the flesh. So the process of skinning the hide devalues the animal's flesh. Therefore, there is no overall monetary gain for the temple treasury. Here too, the value that is enhanced with regard to the planted vegetables by the foliage of the tree is offset by the damage caused by its shade. Therefore, since there is no overall benefit gained from the Ashera, the rabbis deem it permitted to plant underneath it in the winter. So the Gemara asks, and does Rabbi Yoshi hold that when both this and that cause it, that is, when both permitted and forbidden items contribute to a result, the result is forbidden? But isn't it taught in a Mishnah, so Orla 1.9, that Rabbi Yoshi says one may plant the branch of an Orla tree, that is a tree during the first 3 years after its planting, despite the prohibition against eating or deriving benefit from its fruit. But one may not plant an Orla nut because it is a fruit. And Rav Yehuda says that Rabbi Yoshi concedes that if one planted an Orla nut or sank the shoot of an Orla tree into the ground or grafted an Orla tree, deriving benefit from that which grows as a result is permitted. This is apparently because the growth is caused by both a forbidden cause, the orla nut, and a permitted cause, the ground's nourishments. So the Gemara adds, and that which Rav Yehuda says, that Rav says, is also taught in a Braita. So Rabbi Yoshi concedes, and then if one planted an orla nut or sank the shoot of an orla tree into the ground or grafted an orla tree, that which grows as a result is permitted. But we were just starting into dot 49. So that's the end of dot 48. Thanks for watching.